Hey everyone, welcome to Encounters USA. If it's aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, or dogmen you're looking for, you came to the right place. Now listen up as we listen to some of the latest encounters. Hello everybody and welcome to Encounters USA. I'm your host, author Matthew Haynes. Today we have an amazing podcast for you. Now, this podcast has quite a backstory on it, and I'm going to get it to you as soon as I possibly can. But the first thing I want to do is I want to bring out our special guest, and that is Robin Haynes McCrae. Robin, welcome to Encounters USA.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, I apologize to Robin for a minute, but I'm just going to have her stand by because I need to give you a background. If you have been watching the last podcast, I talked about how we were going to be going into this Bigfoot Genome Project. And I had talked about the things that had gone on with it, that I had learned about, and so I was lucky enough to actually get somebody on here to talk about the project itself and also to give Dr. Melba Ketchum's side of the story. Now, I want to give you a little bit of a background before I bring Robin out, and I want to tell you a little bit of how this podcast is going to go. Now, Dr. Ketchum, because of the way she was treated during the project and after the project, understandably, is very shy about appearing on any of these forums anymore, which is completely understandable. So Robin is here to basically be her surrogate. She has talked to Dr. Ketchum, and they've discussed these questions that I asked to Dr. Ketchum, and so Robin is going to give us the answers. So we're going to have Robin go over this information in a little bit, but before we do that, I want to give you a little bit of a background on how I got involved in this and what it exactly is, what the implications are, why it's so important, and then we're going to talk to Robin, and we're going to get Dr. Ketchum's view and viewpoints on many of these issues. Now, why is this so important? It's so important, number one, because it has elements that really need to be told. In this story, there are elements of sexism, elements of slander, discrimination, and that just involves the scientific peer review process. There are also elements of financial and funding jealousy, and of course, there is the ever-present governmental denial that these things even exist. And were it myself, I would have just said, well, what did you expect? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, why else is this story important? Not only because of these elements, but because of the fact that this is the Bigfoot story. For years, researchers have been going out looking for evidence of Bigfoot. People have been reporting encounters. People have come up missing, and through it all, there is nothing but governmental denial in most cases. Now, when I started doing this podcast, I knew that I would be getting into a very difficult area because I don't cover just Bigfoot, I don't cover just UFOs, I don't cover just Dogman. I cover them all. And I knew coming into it that there was some kind of an animosity between the Bigfoot people and the UFO people. And even if you watch the Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they're in a conference and they're talking about, these people are talking about, we see these UFOs, and then the Bigfoot people start talking, and it's like, oh, the crazy people just came out of the woodwork, and that's Hollywood. So this kind of highlights, it underscores this attitude that people have or possibly have and possibly explains why the Bigfoot researchers seem to be treated the way they are, and basically treated as the redheaded stepchildren, if I might, of the paranormal. So I don't normally say these things before a podcast, but there are three things that I really would like to make clear here. That I have three objectives that I want to point out. I want to explain this issue and what happened with the Sasquatch Genome Project in a simple way, because it's a lot of science. It's very difficult to understand, and I want that to be as simple as possible. But I also want people to understand what the truth is, and no matter what that truth is, people should understand what it is. And I want, because I really think it was fair that Dr. Ketchum just walked away from this. I want her to be able to have at least the last word, and through Robin, hopefully she'll be able to have kind of that last word. And if that opens up a crap storm of people saying, oh, this and saying, oh, that, well, that's fine and good and dandy. Your comments are welcome. Your input is welcome, because you're going to find that 50% of the people support Dr. Ketchum and 50% of the people don't. And I think you would find in a lot of cases that 50% of the people that don't really understand what's going on, but they just have the ability to express an opinion for somebody to listen to them, and they don't give any reason or facts for why they say what they say. But we're going to talk about that more. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with Dr. Ketchum and what brought me into this, and when I saw this, and how I really even came across Dr. Ketchum was through former Sheriff Rich Germeau. And he had mentioned her in the project when I was doing an interview with him. So that sparked my curiosity. What's this project, et cetera, et cetera. And then I saw what happened for the project and how she was treated. And I thought it was horrible. And so I have to ask the question, and this is the question that you need to ask, and I'm asking as we're going into this interview. Why would a scientist with a PhD in genetic research, why would she ruin her professional life? Why would she ruin her business? Why would she ruin her credibility for what? For what? And the answers just aren't there, and the answers that come out of the I guess I'm just going to say social media, because I don't want to pin anybody down right now. But the answers that come out are not really answers. It's all speculation and people that just didn't understand the elements of the study. So with those things, and the fact that the bottom line here is we're talking about something that the government says doesn't exist, and it's another example of what they do to the people who say the contrary. That's the biggest story here of all. So of all those, we're going to start asking our questions of Dr. Ketchum through Robin. So Robin, are you still there with us?
I sure am.
All right. Well, thanks for your patience. Thanks for being on the podcast, and thanks for sticking around for that rather verbose introduction.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Okay, so now how we've agreed to do this is that Dr. Ketchum, I wrote out a series of questions, and they have to do with the project itself, how she got involved, her background, what happened during the project and after. So we're just going to go down question by question as Dr. Ketchum answered them, and I'm just going to ask. Now, the first question was, it was that question about well, actually, I didn't get to finish my statement, but this really does seem to be an example of sexism, and that somebody tried to put their nose into a place where a lot of people felt that her nose didn't belong. What would Dr. Ketchum say to how? Would that be an accurate statement, do you think?
I think so. I mean, you have to remember when this whole project started, she never never went looking to do this. That was never even in a frame of mind for her. She really didn't. This wasn't a project that she woke up one day and said, oh, this is what I want to do. It wasn't a concern. It wasn't anything she thought about. She had originally, and Melba and I have talked about this before, she got non-human hair giving a human DNA results. Okay? She was getting people bringing things in for species identification. She wasn't going and looking for these things. These came to her. And when she got that non-human hair, but it still had human DNA, that was it. You know, as a scientist, and she's absolutely brilliant to begin with, and that just perked her interest in it, and she was so curious. That's how she got into it.
Okay. But Robin, who came to her with the DNA, first of all?
These were clients that had different animals that had shown up, whether it be at a farm or wherever, and they didn't know what it was. They were trying to find out what it was, and they brought the samples to her and said, listen, we just want to know what's running around here. You know, and so she took that, thinking that she was going to just find out a species. Okay. And it just opened this huge thing.
What? But they're not Bigfoot hunters. They're farmers, ranchers?
Yeah, these are just regular people. These are not researchers. I mean, she did get research at some point, obviously, because she did the study. But in the beginning, this wasn't, researchers saying, look at this. Now, she may have met some that asked her about it, but primarily it was regular people that had just come in and said, listen, something's getting into this or something we caught doing this. We have these samples and we're trying to figure out what this is because we don't know what we're dealing with. And as a scientist, she took those samples and she tested them. And she got non-human hair, but it also had human DNA.
Okay, Robin, but why did they bring them to her? What was her job that they thought?
At the time, and I asked her about this as well, because you have to remember, I did not know Melba before the study. Dr. Ketchum and I met after the study had been going for quite some time. And that's when we met. So I asked her about it. And at that time, she was a forensic scientist. She was a laboratory director of a multidisciplinary genetics lab that did both human and animal testing. And that was how these samples came to her. When she took those samples, the idea of, oh, look, it's a Sasquatch. It's a Bigfoot. Didn't even enter her mind. She didn't even contemplate that. She was doing her job. And when she got these results, she was hooked.
Yeah, but what, the results didn't point obviously to a Bigfoot. So what would have pointed her in that direction?
Well, when she got the test results, as a scientist, she wanted to know more.
She wanted to know, but did she have an idea?
No. She got the results that she got were non-human hair with human DNA. Okay. There was nothing out there that matched that. So that's why she started doing this. That's how she got it.
Right. But she didn't, but when she tested it, here's just a blank DNA. We don't know what this is. And so now she's...
Right. And she had eventually been hired to do a species ID for Destination Truth. And when she did that, she started getting flooded by samples. And again, I have to really stress this because people don't understand or realize this. She did not set out to do this project. Mm-hmm. This is something that happened to her. And I have to respect her for that because as far as my involvement with the forest people, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all the same thing, I didn't look for them. They found me when I was 4. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't anything, she was in the same situation. She was literally doing her job.
Okay, so I just want people to be able to understand. So she is working as a forensic scientist, and she gets basically, she gets this one test that is really sparks her curiosity. Then she gets another assignment where she starts collecting like certain types of samples, right?
Right, and eventually she get researchers to deal with samples.
In those samples, she started to see more of these anomalies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And what really got it started, I mean, hardcore, was the Destination Truth. They hired her to do the species ID on what people and other researchers were bringing in.
Okay, but so at what point, where is the, I don't know what that word is, the epiphany, at what point is there a connection with the Bigfoot? Does somebody come in and say, you know, you ought to try, or these might be this Bigfoot?
Well, I think after she did enough, and this part I'm just speculating on my own. This isn't something that her words have said. And I want to be clear about that, because I want to make sure the things that she wants said are put out there. But I also want to make sure that people understand that, you know, my own opinion on what I saw and what I believe happened as well, and not to confuse those two.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, my understanding is that she did the Destination Truth and got these samples, and she's finding a lot of these things. It was the same anomaly. Now, she is a forensic scientist. DNA is what she does. Mm-hmm. And that started this whole thing, you know, and as they started getting more and more samples, she was concerned about it being just her that did these samples. I mean, she did double-blind studies and sent them out, so nobody could say, you know, you're hoaxing it, because she wasn't testing it. Mm-hmm. But that's how this whole project got started.
Okay, but the project lasted, up until they published, it lasted 6 years, right?
Correct.
All right, so we're going to talk about the findings, because what you're talking about now is one of the most important thing, and the findings are the most important. But how this actually began, because and it's not through the science, because of the scientific question about the social media, the response, and these people who make all of these accusations, right? And so it looks to me, and I don't want to lead anybody or whatever, and if anybody has evidence to the contrary, we are looking for the truth here, but it looks to me like a scientist found data, no answers to it, and she went looking for her own answers. Mm-hmm. But we just don't know at what point she said that this is a Bigfoot.
Well, and I don't know that I can accurately say, you know, on sample number such and such, or on the day such and such, she decided that that's what it was. I think there was enough proof coming in of the anomaly, and that there was something else going on, and what they suspected.
Yeah. And that's Dr. Ketchum would not roll over in her grave, but I think she'd be upset if I better take that back. I don't think she claimed that it was the Bigfoot. She's saying that
she didn't.
The evidence claimed.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get that out of the way right now, so we don't lose people. What she found.
Right, and I don't want her misquoted, and she never did. You know, in the beginning, she never got a hearing and said, "Oh, that's what this is," because you have to understand that it wasn't in any database. I mean, they don't have it.
Yep. So,
you know, it was her discovery.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned.
But before we lose anybody else, I want to make sure people understand exactly what she found. She found that there was, and I don't want to go into, I'm sure everybody listening to this understands the mitochondrial DNA issue and all that. So what she found was that there is a female mitochondrial part of the cell that comes from a human being, and then there's one that they just don't know what it is. That's correct. That's it. That's all she found.
And you know what? There was another misconception that should be cleared up, because when it came to the nuclear side, which was unknown, she never came out ever at any given time and said it was anything. It was simply listed as unknown. And there were so many rumors about she had said it was this thing or that. It never happened. Never happened. She was very honest with what was on the mitochondrial side, which came back with human. And on the nuclear side, it came back unknown. And she left it at that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but now this is 6 years into the project, right?
Correct.
Now, when you, and I guess we're discussing the scientific process, during the 6 years, she's collecting evidence. Is she collecting evidence for her company, for the job that she initially, okay, so she found the one sample and got excited about it. Her company gave her another assignment, And so she started to run into more of these anomalous samples. At what point did people start bringing her Bigfoot samples, and how did they know to bring it to her? And where does the project start during all this?
Well, when she started it, and it wasn't, you were right, it was a 6-year project. I'm going to just kind of share with you her thoughts on that, because you had asked, that was one of the questions that you had asked, as far as, you know, not only the number of years role and how she played in it. And, you know, when we talked about it, she did manage the study. She collected the data. She compiled everything meticulously for publication, because they knew they were on something big. They knew it. And so she was very meticulous and careful on this.
Okay, Robin, I understand that, but we need to establish the timeline. Like
and you know what?
We don't know that?
Right. I don't know the exact timeline, because when I came into it, the study was towards the end of it. Okay. I was briefed on everything when I came in at it, and I came in before it was published, or tried to be published, but I came in on it and most of it was done. I mean, we're talking, this was a 6-year span of work. Okay. Once she started getting samples, then it was finding the funding for it.
Okay. Well, then let's just, I think we'll try to make it as fair as possible, just according to common sense. She's interested in the project. She finds more samples. And at some point, people say, I mean, I assume she must have she started the project herself, yes?
I believe so. I think there were probably other people that were involved and were very interested in what she was finding. Right. So, and that's how she was able to obtain funding.
Yeah, and I don't think she would have found funding if she didn't have a project. Okay.
Right. So, she had the information there. All right. It needed further study.
Yep. Okay, well, I just want to make sure people understand the timeline, the process, that she didn't just wake up one day and say, oh, I think I'm going to go study Bigfoot.
No, never.
Yeah.
That never even entered her mind.
Yeah, right.
I think she was as blindsided about all this as everybody else when she started getting the results. Yeah. And I think anybody that is a scientist is going to tell you, when you find something as incredible as what she found, you're not going to turn your back and walk away, because you're going to be curious. Yeah. And you're going to want to know, and that's just part of being a scientist.
Yep. But basically, Robin, what she found is she didn't find anything. She found a mitochondrial DNA from a human female and something that we have no idea what it is, right? And so, I don't even without that even being a Bigfoot, it's a great story, because there's something out there. We don't even have, it's not even in our genome.
Absolutely.
So if when people get hung up on this argument, it's always about, first of all, it's this sequence of events. Is there a Bigfoot? Do you believe in Bigfoot? And then you have the guy who believes in Bigfoot, and then he has evidence. And so this is not a question about belief, and it's not even a question about Bigfoot. It's really a question about they found something, and there's something we don't know. There's a creature out there we don't know, and then you follow that up with, well, let's just make sure people understand. There's a human, female mitochondrial. There is a part of the gene, the DNA that we don't know what it is. And so let's just stop right there so people understand that. That's all she found, right?
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about the burden of proof. Why were people out getting pictures of holes punched in pipes that skunks were torn out of, and why were they getting these hair samples? What was that part of the burden of proof required of them?
I don't necessarily know that part was. I mean, they want a background chain on the samples. They want to know how you got it, where you found it, that type of thing. And I think that's pretty common with any type of project that you work on. And so, of course, all that is going to come into play.
Okay. But if this were like a murder mystery, we have basically you have your evidence, and you're just collecting as much as you can to support that evidence.
Right.
And
you got to have a chain of events that led up to this. I mean, you can't just walk outside and say, "Oh, I found a hair on the fence," and call it good. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but to simplify this is like you have a murderer, or you have a murderer but no murderer. So you have to find your suspects, right?
Mm-hmm.
DNA, we don't know what this DNA is, and here's a creature, we don't know what that one is either. So do you think that might be the thing? That might have, and it looks like, I mean, that it's a very simple. If it was anything else, I believe it would be there'd be nothing to it. Any other creature, any other form of wildlife, whatever. But because it's this one,
that's a powder keg right there.
Yeah. So anyway, but I just want people to understand, because I don't think anybody really understands that Dr. Melba found nothing, which was the most exciting thing. And then the people that were contributing to the project were bringing in physical evidence that this is what the nothing is. And that's all.
When she did Destination Truth, that opened it up for everybody. Everybody knew she had tested samples by then, and then it was like a rush job to get stuff to her. And some of these people, and quite a few of them, were actually listed in the project. And if anybody does want to go look at the paperwork, look at the scientific research, all of that on the project, you can go to www.sasquatchgenomeproject.org. And all of that information is on there, anything that they would want to know, as well as a lot of the things we'll discuss today.
Okay. And before we get any farther, Robin, so that's the Sasquatch Genome Project.org on YouTube. I'll have it up
right on the internet.
Big white letters, and I'll also have the links in the video. But is that project still functioning now?
I don't want to say it's 100% closed. We're not really doing anything extremely active right now. Funding is needed to progress with it.
Okay.
So as funding comes available, then we can, relook at it. I don't think this is a situation that would ever be shut down as far as, doing the research. This is really altered her life. And it's, in my opinion, asking an awful lot to continue, for her to continue to fight the fight.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean she doesn't. Okay. She gets contacted all the time with people with samples that want samples tested, but we have to have the funding to do that. And so I don't want to say it's closed, because in my opinion, it's not closed. I would say more it's on pause.
Yeah. Well, I think the only reason it's on pause is because nobody knows it's still open, I believe. So, yeah, if you want to contribute to this project, please do so, because it's not,
like I said, it's not overly active right now. With the right funding and the right samples, it's not out of the question.
Yeah, and also you'll be kind of making up for the travesty that was played on Dr. Ketchum.
Right. She's definitely on hiatus. She's earned it. She has gone through the ropes, and right now she's just kind of taking a step back. She stays on top of everything. She's not that out of the loop, but she's just kind of leaning towards a little bit of privacy and quiet right now.
Okay. And would there be other people? It wouldn't be just Dr. Ketchum. I mean, she'd be the forensic scientist part of it, right? I mean, there'd be other people involved with it.
Oh, yeah.
Like
and
you.
We sent these to labs all over the country. These samples were never contained to just Melba. Dr. Ketchum had these sent out all over the country to the top labs in double-blind studies.
Okay, yeah, and I just can't. So, yeah, we'll get to this at the end, but it's just such a sad story. All right, so let's move along here. Now we're talking about, I'm trying to get at burden of proof required. Did anybody, I mean, when you hear the story, and I think Dr. Ketchum uses the example of nature most often. Is that the best example of how?
I'm sorry, honey, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, so when you guys went for peer review, you have your results, yes?
Yes.
And you go to peer review. I think Dr. Ketchum uses the example of nature. Were you around for when they tried to submit?
Yeah, and she did all the requests that nature, the reviewers had for the paper. They had sent it back. It went through 2 rounds. And there was a lot that was done that was unethical, unprofessional, peer reviews. And she had done appeals to Nature. And again, all of that information, you can go to the website and it's on there for public knowledge.
Okay. But can you give an example of they completed a requirement and then they came back and said, oh no. And I heard also a story that they had done everything they were supposed to do. And at the very end, a lawyer said that I don't know if that was Nature or not, but a lawyer told them they couldn't publish.
That was not Nature. That, I believe, was called James.
And do you know the reason for that?
Yeah. When we did that, we were set to go live with it. They had accepted it. This was after the situation with Nature. And they had accepted the paper and had gone through review. Anything that needed to be revised that the reviewers wanted were done. And, another thing about it, too, is none of Melba's findings were ever put in the paper. She was the one that started everything, but in the paper, it was from the other labs because she wanted that to be separate. She didn't want anybody to question that it was just coming from her, that it was a possibility of hoaxing. So when it came down to the end game on this, and she did the paper, her results that she got were not in it. It was all the other labs that she had sent it to out of double-blind studies. Now, when it went to James, we were set to go. We were supposed to launch it at about midnight. We had gotten hold of Associated Press. There was an announcement that was going to be made. We were literally down to within 30 minutes of it being published. And the lawyers for that particular magazine had come forward and just, in my belief and what I remember of it, because it was a few years ago, the only thing you really would say was the subject matter. I think that it was just because of the human components in it, it was just such a huge thing. Nobody wanted to take that on. This is something that most people never have the opportunity to know. Mm-hmm. The researchers in this community have wanted the answers for this for decades. It wasn't they just woke up and said, oh, let me know. But then she gave it to them and nobody wanted to hear it because nobody expected it to come back with human. And that was what the mind-blowing catalyst was. And so when it came down to get this out, we were set to go. Every revision was done. Every T was crossed. The I's were dotted. It was all set. And literally 30 minutes before publication, we were contacted and the lawyers had come into the owner and said, listen, you cannot do this.
Okay, Robin, I have to go back on this a little bit. First of all, you said Melba's findings were not included. Were her findings different than the other lab findings?
Absolutely not.
Okay, but they weren't included. All right. No. So, the next thing is I'm still trying to figure out why that you found. Do you know what the DNA sample was? Was it hair? Was it blood? And the reason I'm asking is why are they so freaked out there's human DNA involved? Why does that bother them?
Well, I think the whole problem is that when the few people that and there were people out there that had seen these people for years, had seen the Sasquatch people for years. And they are people. They are. They're not an animal. I know it blows people's mind, but the DNA doesn't lie.
But if there is no Sasquatch, what happened to, they're supposed to be objective. Did they know they're testing for Sasquatch?
Some of the researchers were trying to, but they didn't know what they had gotten. They had seen them. They had watched them. There was one study that was done, and I'm not going to give the site out of respecting the people's privacy. Yeah. And they were habituators. They had ongoing contact with this. Adrian Erickson was involved. And they had watched, and they knew where the samples were coming from because they watched them. But the problem was, I think for the real researchers that wanted the truth, that were part of the study, it was a matter of they didn't care what it came out, they just wanted the truth. And when she went into this, that's how it got started. Everybody wanted the truth. Well, the truth was really mind-blowing. People tend to believe that we're the only human species on this planet, and it doesn't work that way now.
Yeah.
And it goes against a lot of beliefs.
Yeah, well, I think you hit it on the head right there, because this is the most screwed up scientific process, except probably for the alien and UFO question, I've ever heard of. Because what you're doing is you're telling me that these scientists that are supposed to be doing objective testing, you know what they're testing for? How is that ever objective? That's not even a scientific process.
Yeah, and again, I go back to the fact that she used 12 labs, not hers. She did her stuff in the beginning. That's how this started. But when it came to the paper, she used 12 of the top labs in the country. And it always amazed me that people questioned it so much, because she didn't use just one. She didn't use just two. She didn't use just three. She used 12.
Yeah.
There really wasn't any more that she could have done. And I don't think that no matter what she had done, it would have ended any differently.
Well, the thing that she should have done, right, I can tell you right now, is they should have never, ever even hinted as to what they were looking for. All they needed to do...
The lab didn't know. The labs never knew what they were testing.
But when you do any kind of scientific experiment, you would basically say, I'm going to do this experiment, and my hypothesis is that there's no DNA for... There's one part of the DNA that's there, but there's one part that is not there. And that's my experiment. And that's it. And never have mentioned.
I want you to know, and I want people to know, that when she sent these to these 12 labs, these were double-blind studies, which meant they had no idea what they were testing.
Well,
she sent them in as a species identification.
Yeah.
There was nothing even, they had not even heard of anybody testing for this. That was never talked about in any private conversations. It was never hinted at.
Okay.
So when they went into these 12 labs on these blind studies, blind meaning they got no information about it. They just got the sample, and she said, please test it and find out what it is.
Yeah.
And then they came back the same.
Well, why I still don't understand why that would bother people, that something comes out with a human. That's good. Okay. And then something we don't know. That really bothered them?
Oh, it bothers everybody. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother the people that know that the study's legit. Okay. But I think that you have, my experience is in this field is that, number one, everybody wants to be the one to make the discovery. And in quite honestly, no matter who's the one that finds out what they are, everybody's going to go against them, because they are not the ones that made the discovery. Because everybody wants to be the next big thing. The other thing is, you have a lot of people that just feel like our human people are supposed to be the best thing on this planet. There can't be anything else in comparison. We are the only human, and unfortunately, that is not the truth. And when that came out, it does go against, I guess, some people's religious beliefs as well. That ties into it. The government has kept this hush for so many years. It's not that they don't know about them. They have kept it closed. They don't want the information out. They're never going to want the information out. And I think it was literally a compilation of all of those factors. And certainly when she started this, that was the last thing she was going to find. She truly thought when these people brought these samples to her and said, please let us know what's running around our property.
Well,
she's thinking it's going to be an animal.
Yeah. Okay, but why is it such a, I know you're giving all these explanations, and I'm sure it's speculation as to why this really bothers people. So what, there's different life forms around. Look at Congress. There's evidence right there. I'll throw that in. But do you really think that, because, 100 years ago, like it'd be the Scopes monkey trial, and they'd say, we're the apex, we're the biggest, strongest of them all. But that's not the argument now. It's not about religion. So who would be pushing that? I mean, who would be trying to cover that up?
Well, the government, number one.
Any reason?
Absolutely. The government isn't going to want anything to come up that says it's human. This goes really deep, this rabbit hole, and that's for another show because it really doesn't have anything to do with the project that Dr. Ketchum did.
Does it step on religious toes of any kind?
Actually, it does.
We're talking about, and it doesn't have to be Christian, it could be secret society.
Well, I think you're talking about all of the above. There really isn't a simple answer, I guess is my point. You can't just say the government. You can't just say people don't want to believe there's human in it. And you can't just say it's religious aspects because it's actually a combination of all of them. It's just, this is something that is so hard for people to swallow. Now, I will point out that the habituators that have ongoing contact with these Bigfoot people, they don't doubt for a second. Now, one person that has a lot of content as far as habituators, I'm not going to speak for all researchers because I don't know every researcher out there. Yeah. And there's very conflicting beliefs between all the researchers. Yeah. But the habituators that I have contact with, that I talk to, and I'm one myself, there's once you're around them and have an ongoing relationship as far as being around them, there's no doubt in anybody's mind they're human. They're just that. They have human mannerisms. They have their own culture. They have their own language. They're a very spiritual being.
Robin, you bring up a very good point here, and that is like people that listen to this podcast, I would hope we're not in the stage of do you believe. We're in the stage of actually looking for specific creatures. We're looking for specific species. We're looking for habits. We're looking for family ties. We're looking for things that an anthropologist would look for.
Well, and their family units are incredible.
And so I think that this thing, I really get annoyed by this question of do you believe in all that? I've never seen it, but there is so much evidence that how could there not be? I live in Washington State, and people disappear here a lot. So, all right. So, Robin, let's before we move on, I want to make sure. Go ahead.
People look at it from a scientific point, okay, and that's fine because you have to understand that this is such a situation where the science part of it and the habituators part of it sometimes can get a little murky. But there is a place in it. And my personal belief is that you have to have both sides to be able to find out the truth about them. There are parts of it that are scientific, such as the DNA, which is what we're discussing today. You cannot fake DNA. You just can't. Yeah. And the people out there that have come down so hard on her, it was just heartbreaking. And, she held her head high the whole time. I never saw her attack anybody when she was attacked. And she stuck to the science.
Yeah.
And the science is solid. And I will go to my grave saying it. And you can't fake the DNA. But it is mind-boggling for people. When you think of things running around in the woods, you're thinking of animals. And human beings like to feel that they're superior.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that has something to do with it. I think everybody personally has their own reasonings as to why they're acceptable to them or not acceptable to them. And that's fine. They're entitled to it. But you can't discount the DNA because it doesn't lie. And you can keep whatever beliefs that you want, and that's fine, but it doesn't change the DNA.
Yeah. So, Robin, last question before we move on. We're actually only halfway through. We'll have to move a little bit faster. But the last question I have for you on this, why would they find it so hard to accept, is that do you think they're just afraid of I don't know? That we're the government, we get paid lots of money, and I don't want to come out and say, I don't know. And so they'll just shut anything up. Because I think it's about money.
I think that's a huge factor. One of many.
But not only money it's money for not only for the people spending money in the parks, but it's money for people that are in biology and that teach in universities. I lived next door to Grover Krantz when I was in college, and he was the I went to Wazoo, Washington State University. And Grover was my neighbor, and he was just a nutty, he's an old man at the time, but he was the nutty UFO or the Bigfoot guy. And
Right.
but he was a nice guy, and he showed us into his house and showed us his stuff. But he was the Bigfoot guy, and it didn't really. I was in college, kids and girls. I didn't care that much about Bigfoot at the time. So anyway, but
Right.
that seems to be society's take on it, and I think what we're kind of trying to do here is make sure people understand exactly that she did find something. She found nothing. It's a big thing, and for whatever reason, people could not accept that. So now let's get into the reaction. And
Yeah.
I asked Melba, I asked her specific questions about after they completed the study. Oh, there's a couple things that I want to make it clear that I did ask Melba, and I asked her if she would receive additional compensation for positive results. And
Yeah, never.
yeah, and her answer was she didn't get compensation, and she did have the positive results. All
She
right.
did. But she was never supposed to get paid. She didn't go into this to make money. And most people that are into any field of research on Bigfoot, you're not going to make any money. If you want to be in it because that's what you want to do, that's your passion, that's one thing. But when you start thinking you're going to make money, it's not going to happen. She didn't go into this to make money. She was never promised to make money. Okay? When she got into it, she never got compensated for it.
Yeah.
She did it because she was passionate about it and she was curious as to what this was. And she really believed in the beginning. People. And then when she gave them exactly what they asked for, because they had all said that's what they wanted, they couldn't handle it. But she did get positive results.
Yep. Well, we're going to talk about how much they couldn't handle it, because I asked Dr. Ketchum about the specific people, and I'm not going to say the name, but there's a very prominent academician. Don't know what that word is, but anyway, he was like Grover Krantz, but he's working for a different university nearby, Wazoo. And do you want to? I asked her what was the reception that she got during the study from this prominent. And he's not an anthropologist, is he?
It depends on which one.
Oh, he is an anthropologist. He's not a geneticist. So,
Okay.
do you have a reaction for when I?
Yeah. To begin with, she got bad-mouthed and trashed about this before the study even started. As soon as any type of news went out, what was going to happen, she was never given the opportunity to do the study because she was attacked before it ever happened, and she had not met this person at that time.
Okay, Robin, can I stop you for a second? Do you know about their? I saw there on this Bigfoot show, they went to a lake in Canada and they got DNA. Do you know if that was before or after that?
I believe that was before the study, but I don't want to be quoted on that.
Before her study.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that. I know that she knows about those results. She may have even had something to do with, information on that. Yeah. I don't necessarily know that was ever used in her study. No, I don't believe so.
But it came back bear or human or something, right? But it was nothing anybody suspected of being Bigfoot, right?
Well, I'm kind of hesitant to comment on that. I do have knowledge about it.
Okay.
But because I'm not the one that did the testing, I don't want to per se interject. Am I aware of it? Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Okay. I just want, for the record, to show that the DNA testing that they did not come up. It came up like bear, or it came up human. And there was no question of this is Bigfoot or some mysterious DNA. Whereas
I will tell you that
Melba's was mysterious. So
I will say as far as that from the cabin, the only thing I will say on that is they were very clear on what it was.
What was
and
it?
I can't interject on which one it came back, but they are very aware of what it was.
I'm sorry, I lost that last part.
I said when they did the testing on that, they do know what made, what, so you're talking about the one where they had the board with the nails in it and it stepped on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they know what it was. I can't comment as far as on those results. Because I would not want to, number one, break that confidence, number two, misquote something.
Yeah.
On a conversation that I was brought in on and I knew about years ago. But they do know what did.
Yeah, well, they didn't come out and say we found Bigfoot.
They didn't come out, they said they found a bear either. They didn't come out and say what exactly it was.
Okay. And that's just because of my simplified outlook on life, and that no lab is ever going to admit it, because they will get the funding pulled and they'll never get another job again.
Well, as far as that one in Canada, like I said, they did find out what it is. And I'm not going to say that they said it was a Bigfoot, but I'm not going to say they said it was a bear either. Because this was a conversation I was brought in on years ago. I know the situation, what went on there. And I know Melba knows of it. As far as do I know that she did the testing on that, I can't say that because I don't know that she was. She was, and as far as knowing the results and what went on through that experience, yes, she knows about it.
Okay. Do you know specifically what he was saying about her when this is during the study? I just want people to understand that. Do you know what he was saying when he was?
Well, he trashed it. I mean, he didn't believe in it at all. He had already badmouthed her, even though he had not met her. Okay. And I will say that I had that same experience with him. But he trashed her before the study started. At that point, when it started, in my opinion, I don't think she would have ever done anything right in his eyes at that point. Because he had already gone after her on a person that he did not know.
Okay. And any speculation on the motive?
I think jealousy. I think people don't realize that in this particular field, I have never seen the jealousy and hate go on in any other type of research as in this. And people say, oh, I'm not jealous. I know the truth. Well, you know what? You kind of don't. Some people do. I'm not saying they don't, but not everybody does, because they don't want to accept what the DNA states. Now, the subject of a Bigfoot is far wide and deep. And it goes well past just the genetics, which is what we're dealing with today. But this is where there's so much subdivision in this, because, you've got the DNA that's very clear. You can't alter it. You can't change it. What it is. And there were so many samples taken. As far as I'm concerned, it's solid.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you have their behaviors, which another group believes certain things about. And then you have another group that doesn't want to believe everything because they have not been witness to all the behaviors. Yeah. So it's really like just this huge hotbed. And when it comes to this, the particular person that we're talking about at that point, as soon as he found out this study was going to be done, I think another thing, and I hate to sound, like everything is sexist, and it's not always, but in this case it was, is everybody was out there trying to find what she found accidentally.
Yep.
And I think that just infuriated people from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think your point about DNA. I mean, imagine if you are looking again for that murder suspect, and you can get an anthropologist in, and he's going to explain about how this person's behavior and his relation in the family unit contributes to him killing that person. But that's not going to convict a person as fast as your DNA, right?
Well, exactly.
And so, but it's just and I'm not saying this is a motive, but for an anthropologist, it is a definite loss of control.
Yes, absolutely. And, you have to understand, too, that the science and the habituators, okay, there's two groups there. You have contactees and habituators, researchers, that's another group, and then you have the scientists. And the scientists, their facts are valid because, you can't dispute DNA. But that DNA sometimes doesn't really coincide with what other people are watching them do, because people don't want to open their minds to the possibilities. And I want to bring up another point, too, is we have been programmed since the time we were little to believe a certain way. And one of those is that these people do not exist. Okay? The things that they can do, the things that are part of their culture and their lives don't exist. And so even when you find something as solid as the DNA, people can't wrap their mind around that.
Yeah.
They can wrap it around it being another animal, but when it comes into their human and can be brought in on the same level, they don't get that. They won't accept that because we have been programmed for hundreds of years on what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, what is real, what isn't real. And in all honesty, and this is my opinion, this is not something that Dr. Ketchum said, in my opinion, we have been lied to from the get-go. And until people are ready to open up the possibility that we are not the one and only thing here, it makes it really difficult. And I think people were scared. I think people were angry at the results and very misguided in where to put that anger. She didn't make up the results. And again, I go back to the study. She didn't use her results. That might have been what got the whole thing started. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then brought it on Destination Truth. That got it started. But when that paper was done, and people don't realize that, her results were not put in that paper.
Yeah. Now, Robin, when her results initially came out, okay, so I want to go down my list of suspects. So we're still looking at the suspects. What about these people in the media, like, those people, the Bigfoot hunters, or so? How was she treated by the?
Oh, terrible, absolutely terrible. I think dirt sells better than the truth.
Yeah.
And when there wasn't any dirt to dig up, they made it up.
Okay.
And because they were not happy with what the results said, they needed to disqualify it. And even though you and I know, and any rational human being or anybody that, and I'm not a scientist, I don't claim to be, but with a scientific background, know that you can't change the DNA, people still try to discredit it. And if the only way they could do it was to attack her, they were fine with it. She could be a casualty to them because they didn't care. But she's a human being. Mm-hmm. That gave her entire life at that point to get people the answers that they've been running around for years wanting. She put everything on line. Everything. Yeah. I have the utmost admiration for her because she did it with dignity and honesty, and they slaughtered her for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you keep touching on these really, really important points. And one of them is that if you go out and publish that this is a human being, this is a human family, treat these things differently. And first of all, people are going to want these Bigfoot hunters to quit going out and knocking on trees and trying to wrestle these people up or whoever they are.
Well,
and it's a question of how you treat them. How are they to be treated? How are they to be protected?
Absolutely. I would never, my groups that I have around me, would I ever even consider going out. And when you go in the woods, you're now in their home. And I would never go out and behave with them on how some of these hunters are. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. If I was a Bigfoot, I'd kick your butt.
Exactly.
I'd eat you just for that. So.
Yeah. And the thing of it is and I stress this to people as well because people don't seem to get this point. There are good and there are bad. Okay, just like there are with us. I mean, we've got rapists and murderers and psychopaths, and they aren't any different. But we also have wonderful people, and so do they. And I'll tell you what, I've been treated better by them than I have than our own species. From day one.
Yep.
I would rather go in the woods with my groups than be out with a group of people, of us, any day of the week. They have more love and more compassion and are more firmly grounded. Now, they are a different kind of people. They aren't like us. They're different. They're an ancient type of people. But there are good and bad. And there's a lot of these groups out, and there's one right now, and I'm not even going to bring up the person in charge of it because I'm just saddened by the fact that he's partaking in this.
But now, Robin, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you've had lots of encounters, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you're coming back. I want to tell you that right now. And we're going to talk about all of that because I mean, that's what we really need to be talking about. We need to be talking about behaviors, and I want to find out about ability that these things have. These are the discussions that we should be having. Unfortunately, we got to clear this up. So
yeah, let's deal with the DNA today.
The study is done. She's been trashed during the study, and then it's finished. And okay, so give me the sequence of events. She did a lot of TV appearances. When did people like this professor and the Bigfoot people, did they start trashing her before her appearances or after?
It was before the study is when the attack started. As soon as it was known that what the study was about, it hadn't even started yet, and he had already gone after her.
But Dr. Ketchum says that this particular person didn't know what she was doing and made other nasty comments. How would he even know what she was doing? He's not a geneticist. So.
Well, my experience with them, and I'm just being honest, and I'm not one, and anybody that knows me, even off of Facebook or anything, I try to be pretty diplomatic.
Yeah.
Because I don't disqualify other people's experiences, whether, I believe it or not. It's not mine to debate. But in his case, I really think it came down to the jealousy. He was at the top of his game in his profession, and anybody coming into that might knock him off the pedestal could be a problem.
Yeah.
I know.
Robin, look at Dr. Ketchum. She's this blonde Pat Benatar like. And she's just going to take the whole country by storm. And where's that going to leave him? I can see that.
Well, and I think, again, I have to say the same thing. People are very misguided about the information on her because she's never come forward and addressed it and said, you know what, you guys, I'm tired of all of you, and this is my truth. She didn't. She kept her head high and she stuck to her job, and she did nothing but stay on science. The credit to her. Unfortunately, people took that as her acknowledging everything that was said out there, which is the furthest thing from the truth. Yeah. She did her job, and she stayed focused in spite of these other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Robin, I mean, I'm not a woman. You are. Don't know the experience, but do you think I'm correct in that? I mean, that she really would have been the go-to person for the media.
Oh, absolutely.
Because she just got it. She's got everything.
That woman has got more knowledge on this subject than people will ever know. And whatever is out there is about a tenth of what she knows.
Yep. And that would have, and then another thing is, I'm just adding this, and it's not even part of this, but she would have started to add some intellectualism to the argument, not hillbillies out banging on trees. And
absolutely.
No offense to hillbillies everywhere, but banging on trees doesn't prove anything.
No, and they're so intelligent, just unbelievably intelligent.
Yeah, so, so that, I think she just brought an element that a lot of people were very afraid of. So let's get to the last thing, Robin, and that is this guy who claims to the bear. Do you know anything about this guy who says he shot a Bigfoot?
Yes.
Etc. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I will say I have not personally spoke to him. I know the entire situation as far as that goes. I watched the many stories on TV. As far as that goes, I know what went down when it happened, and I know what went on with her in that situation.
I mean, that guy said some scarring, horrible, rotten things, and I mean, why would he do that?
Well, again, and this is my perspective. I can tell you Melba's thoughts on it, and she didn't.
Robin, first of all, it's either the truth or it's not.
Exactly.
Is it the truth or not?
It depends on which story you want to go by, because there's been several that he said.
Okay, well, so there's one that has legal implications, and I don't know why she let it go, but where he says that she basically told him to, basically defraud the study by changing a result of a sample. That's why would he do that?
Well, I think when you're talking about a sample coming back, I mean, in the beginning, he didn't know it was going to come back as.
Yeah.
And as far as the story leading up to it, there's been many versions of it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reflect back to Melba on this because when she was asked this question for this interview, she was very adamant. She said, I know the story that I was told.
Yeah.
And, whether or not, that's true doesn't matter because the only thing that matters is the forensics in it, is the DNA. And the DNA will tell the story.
Yeah.
And so she has once again taken the high road and just said, I can sit here, and she knows the truth on this stuff. She does. Yeah. She could sit here all day long and say, I'm going to go with story A, B, and, create an entire storm on that and drama, or she can do exactly what she does and says, the DNA doesn't lie. The DNA is the story. It doesn't matter what I think of the stories that are told. It doesn't matter what I think of him as a person. The only time that they met, it was cordial. It wasn't like there was an argument or anything like that. It was cordial. But again, she's going to stick directly to the DNA.
Okay. Is there any, first of all, when I heard a story before I ever heard of this Dr. Ketchum thing, and he came up on, he says, on a Bigfoot, and apparently he killed a young one. He pulled out a gun and shot a young thing he didn't even know what it was.
Right.
First of all, what kind of person would do that, and what kind of person would admit that?
I know. And like I said, I've never thankfully met him. And I'm not going to trash anybody because it's not my story. I wasn't there when it happened.
Yeah.
I will say, as far as the killing of them, I can't even comprehend that.
Yeah.
He was not in any danger. From what I've been told, if the story that I was told was true, and the story I've heard different versions that he spoke of on TV. I'm not talking about anything in a conversation between Melba and myself.
Yeah.
Because that's a private conversation. But as far as what I saw, the different stories that he told on TV, and I'm sure only he knows the reasons that he did it, but when you murder something, and I believe in my heart that that's what it was, and then it comes back human. And I don't believe that he ever thought when he turned the sample in that was going to be the case. I think he believed it was going to be some form of animal, which is what most of the world thought. But everything changed. You have to understand, if this would have come back an animal, this whole study would have gone differently. And you're still going to have your haters, but I don't believe that it would have created the storm that it did. But because it came back human, that changed everybody. It changed everybody's way of thinking. And now you're looking at, if it were myself, if I had done it, which I never would, but if I had been in that position and it came back human, my first thought would be, oh my God, I'm going to go to jail for this. Yeah. I just killed another human being. Now, again, I've never talked to Justin. I can't comment on his mindset or what he says or doesn't say. In my opinion, I think that probably had something to do with it.
Do you think he was influenced by the government, or do you think they may have? He said some horrible things that you just don't have. You don't have any reason. She didn't say anything about him, so
no.
Even if it's true, the things that he said say that. But anyway, my point is, do you think that there's some pressure or getting something from somebody for saying these things?
That is a possibility. I'm not going to say that that's what happened. I think that, like everybody else, this is something nobody believed existed. And I think he went at it with stars in his eyes and thought, you know what? I'm going to be famous because now I can prove they exist because I just killed them. He didn't care.
Well, Robin, I have to tell you, I don't believe a word of the story. I don't believe any of it. And
there's a lot I don't believe in.
He would have said, "Oh, I'm going to break this open by leaving the creature here. I'm going to leave it here, and then I'm going to come back 2 weeks later and try to find it." No, and I told Melba, I said, "You should check that thing taxidermy chemicals. You should have checked his sample for taxidermy. 'Cause
Yeah,
I think he got a bear. Anyway, but what I think is not important, what I want to get at here is why did she contact him? Did she need more DNA?
well, I mean, the whole contact as far, it doesn't even matter who contacted who. The bottom line is the sample was given to Melba to test. It was tested, and it did come back. And again, through these other 12 labs, so you can't, that was the other misconception. Everybody pinned it on Melba, and did she fake it? Did she, do this? The ones in the lab, in the paper, it wasn't even hers, that she did. It was all these other ones. And I just don't think that when it came down to it, when the DNA got tested, I don't believe he ever felt it would come back human. And then when it did, the story started changing and things started coming up. And, only Justin is going to know the truth. And that's between him and God. I mean, I can't, I can speculate. I can tell you what I can know what I know, but it doesn't matter. Because the story of how it happened has no significance at this point because we're dealing with the DNA, and the DNA is what matters.
Is the DNA coming back the same as the other DNA with the female? So the DNA he submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That he later tried to say was bear, and it was very clearly not.
Okay.
And if you go on in the website that we had, you will see a picture of the sample. I'm sure it's probably still up because it's been up. And the sample isn't even the same color as a bear. So it was like it had lots of black. It was more of a grayish white and stuff. But regardless, it doesn't even look like bear hair.
But all right. But I mean, conclusively, it's just like the other sample.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'm wrong. I guess he shot a Bigfoot. And then he
did.
Got back 2 weeks later
and may karma answer, because what he did, he was not, my understanding, and even in the stories I've heard him tell, and I'm basing this on what came out of his mouth, not somebody else's, because again, I can't comment on a situation I wasn't there for, but when I've heard him on various shows tell different stories of it, I've yet to ever hear him say that he felt threatened. I've heard him say that the male was waving its arms in the air. Now, when you look at our military and, there's a soldier that's been come up on by the enemy and he's waving his arms in the air, that's kind of like a surrender. So I don't see where that's threatening. And the other one was a child, a small child.
Yeah.
I have a very difficult time in any capacity feeling like he was threatened.
Yeah.
And again, if I'm going out on a limb here, I haven't heard him say he was threatened, but let's just say he was threatened by the adult. Why would you get out of your truck?
Yeah.
He was in his truck when he came around that corner to that clearing. If you felt threatened, why would you get out?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of components there that I find very difficult, to be compassionate about.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, the story doesn't matter because that's Justin's truth.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that he was there and his friend was with him, and I'm not going to comment on that because it wasn't my experience. So I can't say it's one way or the other. And I have to agree with Dr. Ketchum on this, and let's just stick to the DNA results.
Okay. Well, that's really odd. His story is really freaky. And how somebody can pull out a rifle and shoot what he knows is a small creature. I think people should question: does this guy really need a license to have a gun?
I know. Yeah, it's kind of frightening.
That's a weird thought.
But again, the DNA isn't going to lie. The DNA matched what everybody else's DNA was. That's why it was used in the study.
Okay.
And there were more samples. The samples that didn't come out to be a Bigfoot weren't used in the study.
Yeah.
But that was in the study because it did come out there.
Okay. So, I just have to ask this question. If it wasn't for, I can't remember, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but were it not for him and all the stink that he raised, would there be less of a problem with the study? Or would it still be problematic, as they say?
No, the study, in my opinion, the study can stand on its own.
Okay, but I'm just saying.
Over 100 samples. His wasn't the only one there.
Okay.
So even if his sample hadn't been in it, and it was a good contributing factor, I'm not going to lie, he had a good sample. Unfortunately, the way it was gotten is a little bit sad. But as far as that goes, there was enough samples anyway.
Okay.
But it was a good sample because it was of the flesh.
Okay. Well, I if that sample is legitimate and it came up as this mysterious DNA, then I would think that he's been pressured. He's obviously, doing things illegally. Might not have the best of character, and definitely a person that the Park Service or the FBI could pressure. Say something because they only need one.
Yeah, and again, I can't really comment on that. I know Melba did not want to comment on that. Yeah. Because as always, she takes the high ground and she said that's his story, that's his truth. He's going to, whatever that may be, but she's going to stick strictly with the science part of it. She's not going to back off anybody. She's not going to, she knows the truth. She knows things that have happened and not, but it doesn't mean that she's going to bring that out in the public eye.
Okay. Well, it's in the realm of possibility. It's happened before. So why wouldn't it be happening now? And in a individual who goes out and shoots juvenile hunters that he doesn't even know what they are. So
yeah.
All right. Well, Robin, can I ask?
It was on 2 legs. It wasn't on 4.
I never got to ask you this. Do you have a science background? Are you into genetics and?
No, actually, I'm not. And it's been really refreshing for me with Melba because now I have somebody I can go to. She's my go-to girl. I can ask all the stuff. My background with this, again, like with Melba, I didn't look for this. They found me when I was 3 or 4 years old.
Wow.
I don't remember any of my life with them not being around. And I do want to point out, because I'm like everybody else. I get ridiculed, especially by the certain scientific person we were referring to. I had people with me when these things go on. And when I had a friend with me. I had a female that came in my backyard to show me her baby. And I had somebody with me. I wasn't looking. This is the thing. If it was only I saw them by myself, then I really could understand that particular person or other people questioning it. I would probably question it too, but that's not the case.
Yeah. Well, don't tell any more stories. You're coming back.
Okay.
Well, I want to hear all of them. You might even co-host for a while. All right, so let's just get through the rest of our questions for Melba. We're almost on an hour and a half. So, are you, or I guess, what's Melba's interest in the paranormal these days?
I think she's pretty satisfied with it. I don't think she's out searching for it anymore. She was interested for a while, and she got her answers, through the study. And she's just at a point in her life, she just wants peace and quiet.
Yeah.
She's very private. Believe it or not, she was actually private before. Yeah. She was out in the public eye speaking of the science and not about anything else, And so now she's just she's satisfied and she's had the answers. Mm-hmm. Will there be other things she wants to do research on and get involved with? Well, of course, she's a scientist. But for right now, at this point in her life, she is very satisfied with what she's learned because she knows it's factual. She knows it's solid.
Yeah.
And she's just living her life. She's, kind of quiet, very private, and she just wants peace.
Yeah. So, Robin, if one of the vast amount of millionaires and billionaires that listen to this podcast, they were to approach her at Project Genome,
Sasquatch Genome Project.org.
Would she and say, Melba, we want you to get back on your horse? And
wouldn't that be wonderful? Because
Would she do it?
You know, she's a person that could really move mountains.
Yeah, I agree with that. So she would do it.
Yep. And I will back her till my dying day. And I mean, this is a person, and I want to point out another thing too that we didn't kind of hit on is when she got attacked by everybody, it wasn't just verbal. There were death threats. I mean, her life was threatened. And this was because she gave everybody what they wanted. They wanted the truth. They wanted to know what the DNA said. And all she simply did was give it to them. And she didn't just do it from her words. She took from words of all these other labs. And that's what she pushed, was not her findings, was theirs. And this is what they did to her. I mean, she had death threats from people. She had interference from the government. And it's very sad. And she's somebody that can move mountains. She's somebody that could get the job done on not only this, but other, possible cryptids or anything else that was asked of her.
Yeah. Kind of takes you back to the Salem witch trials, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. But, she had such a good reputation when this started. I mean, she was a forensic scientist.
Yeah.
She was doing DNA analysis for all kinds of projects.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is what's just so sad. Because she had the credentials, and the only thing that was ever brought up was she was a vet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, number one, I, as an animal lover, my animals get better vet care than I get with a doctor. I make sure of it. But that in itself is nothing to sneeze at. But she went past the vet when she got into this other DNA and forensic. And nobody ever really brought that out. It was, well, she was a vet. Well, so what? It's still DNA.
Yeah.
And that wasn't what she was specializing in when this happened. She was doing forensics. Mm-hmm. She could go into a court of law and testify on the DNA and forensics. And they just totally destroyed her. And right now, her life is pretty much, keeping the peace and living quietly and privately away from all this. I mean, she has no desire to deal with the Bigfoot community. None. And I don't blame her. She did exactly what they wanted her to do, and they crucified her.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of, I don't know why people do what they do. I have to question what would have the reaction been had she been the professor from the college over by my alma mater. If he'd come out with it, I don't think there would have been all this. Nobody would have attacked him. So
no. I think if she would have been a man, and I hate to say that because it does sound like, the sexist world, and I'm not coming down on that. I'm just simply saying, had she been a man, she would have gotten flack. And I don't think it would have gone this far, but she was going to get flack anyway because of the jealousy. There's such an insane amount of jealousy in the Bigfoot community. And I'm not pointing fingers at any certain person. Okay? I mean, I don't know everybody.
Yep.
And I stay, relatively to myself, other than, I do have people that I work with as far as to help them with habituation situations. Yep. But there is a huge amount of jealousy.
Yeah.
Anytime you go on Facebook in these Bigfoot communities, one person achieves one thing or gets a good picture. And it doesn't matter if it's a stick structure or of a Bigfoot. And everybody zooms in.
Yep.
And it becomes a bloodbath. Yeah. It's ridiculous. There's no support. There's no camaraderie. There's no caring for the truth. It's all about everybody standing on their soapbox, pumping their chest out to see who's going to be the bigger one and who's going to look the best. And everybody wants to be on the front burner, and it just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. You don't get the truth that way.
Yeah.
You get chaos, and that's what there is now.
Yeah, and, it's like they say, opinions are like, everybody's got one, and social media allows everybody to express that. So,
well, and I do allow everybody their opinions. I don't discredit anybody's opinions because they're there. They're their opinion, and they have a right to have their opinion. My problem is, I may not agree with everybody out there, but I don't attack anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. But,
okay. And I'm not any better than anybody else. It's just, I have a problem with the violence and the hate.
Yeah, and I think that, had she been a man, I think the extent of, you're talking about, if this would have been there, I think that, because it's not men in general. I think in this film, it's an outdoor, it's like hunting,
Mhm. I agree.
it's very male dominated, very manly male dominated, like myself.
Well, and we have a lot of people in the scientific community that are not about to let a woman come out of nowhere.
Well,
when they've been working on trying to get this information for years, and here's this woman, that just came out of nowhere with it.
Yeah.
And blew them away. And I think that was, a contributing factor.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And an easy target. And she'd never, tried to fight back. And I wasn't even here for any of this. I was overseas. But if I had known any of this, if I had known her, I would have jumped right on and said, you people are wrong. And you don't understand anything she's trying to do. But it doesn't look like anybody's even tried to do that. So,
no.
That I've seen.
She's had a few people that stood by her, myself being one of them. And I will defend her till the end of time.
Yeah,
I will bank everything on her. I know her not only as a scientist, but as a human being.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, you could be the best scientist in the world, but if you're lacking as a human being, I can't take you as credible.
Yeah.
And except I can't denounce what the science says. I can take that as true, but it also affects me as a person. Yeah. And I've known her since 2012, I think. And she's probably one of the finest human beings I've ever met.
Yeah.
I've never known her to be anything but honest, have integrity, stand by her convictions. And when I see the things that people say and the way she's been treated, I've got to, but not like what she's gone through. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I will defend her. I'm honored that she's my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honored that she let me take part in that project, even though it was certainly not at a high level. I helped her in any way she needed, whether it be paperwork, phone calls, scheduling, whatever, and if she were to start another project, I'd be there doing the same thing.
Can you move up to Washington?
I put her in the highest regards.
Okay. You move up to Washington for a few months and help me out?
Yeah, absolutely. I got to bring out my group with me, though, so you're going to need a lot of room.
All right. Well, maybe not. Don't have that much room. Yeah, it's really a sad story. And hopefully today's July 19th. Hopefully today's the day that this all turns around, because I hope this...
Yeah, and I encourage people, go to the website. Yeah. The paper is there. The facts are there. Everything about this. Her CV is there. If they want to know what kind of a background she has, then please, people, look at it. It's extensive. It is not what was put out in the public eye.
And that is
all that information is on the site. If anybody has questions that want to contact, there is a contact spot. And it'll go either to Melba or myself, and I'll make sure she gets it.
Okay. And that is SasquatchGenome.org.
No, Sasquatch Genome
Project.org. I gotta get off of here. I think I'm starting to lose it. All right, Robin, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. It's been lovely.
This and it's so interesting, and definitely I want to have you back as soon as possible. I'm actually going to get a couple more guys on here to talk about. I'm going to get Scott Carpenter on here to talk about his book. Because he was involved in the project, right?
I'm pleading.
Well, okay, well then.
Scott Carpenter was involved with the project. My understanding is that there's been a lot of positive feedback on the book. Mm-hmm. I don't have anything negative to say about Scott. My only concern is that it was the project that she did, and it wasn't Melba that came out with it. It was Scott. Uh-huh. I have not spoke to him. I've never had a problem with Scott, ever. I don't have anything bad to say about it.
So Scott published the results, but Melba didn't?
Melba did the paper. And I'm not, like I said, I have not talked to Scott. I'm not saying anything negative about him in any way. Mm-hmm. I have only briefly talked to him. There was a few times on the phone during the end of the project. So I can't really comment on that. But, you're talking about everything in the book it was Melba's life.
Yeah.
During the course of this project. And I do believe that, he feels in some way he's helping clear her name. I'm not going to say he's doing this with any malice, because I really don't believe that is true. I don't think he's doing this in a bad way. I guess maybe because I'm so protective.
Yeah.
Dr. Ketchum?
I can assure you he's not. Because how I got a hold of Scott is I interviewed Rich Germeau, and that's how I knew about Melba. And Scott said, I worked with Melba on the study, and I have a book about it. And so I just said, I'll try to.
Yeah, I've never known Scott to be a bad person or anything like that. He's always a very honest person.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know him well. I only had a couple of conversations with him. I would never say anything against him.
Okay.
Because I don't think he's doing this in a bad form.
Yeah.
Because I am so protective of her, because I've watched her go through so much. All the facts are that, what went on in that project.
Yeah.
And I just worry, and I don't think that he would mislead anything. That's not a concern I have. I find him to be a very honest person.
Yeah.
But it's just that was what happened with her, on that project. And so I am kind of protective about her in that manner. I don't want anything, negative said about Scott, because I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
But I am protective when it comes to Melba and what she went through during the course of that project, and with nature, and with, some of the people that donated samples.
Yeah.
That the book is about her life and what she went through. And I know it's primarily full as far as what went on during that time span. But I have to say, and I don't know, these aren't Melba's words, these are mine. If it were myself in her place, I might be kind of hurt, just because reliving that over and over and over again. And since it was what she went through during the course of the project, she wasn't the one that came out with it. And I kind of believe that if she didn't come out with it, there may have been a reason.
Yeah, but she still has, she can still write her story.
Absolutely. He's not stopping her from doing that. And like I said, I'm not saying anything negative about Scott, because I don't find that he's a bad person. I don't find that he's not truthful and honest. I always thought he was nice. I still do.
Well, okay, so what I even brought this up for is because I'm looking at this I've done a couple of podcasts already, one with Rich about these missing people, this 411 David Politis, and there's definitely enough evidence in the Olympic National Park where I live that these people are disappearing with no evidence. Where did they go? And then they find remains, but then they say, we found the remains of this person before they ever do testing. Right? And then they publish, we found this person's remains. And then they don't say what happened to them. And how did they get moved?
Well, they won't. Anything that, and I don't think that every situation is Bigfoot related. I do believe there is some are. And I think the government has tried so hard to cover anything concerning Bigfoot up that they will continue to do that at all costs, whether it's, lying and saying that it was because of this, or pushing it under the rug, or like in the instance with Mount St. Helens, and there were so many bodies that were burned there, and they just confiscated the bodies, and the public was never told anything more about it. Just all that type of thing. They cover it every single time. Yeah. Anytime there has been a body, it ends up with the government. And so I think, that really has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. But, in the end, like you say, I'm sure it's a lot of things. Well, Robin, let's wrap this up. We're almost on 2 hours now, and I could sit here and talk forever, but I don't want you to let out any of your Bigfoot stories. Do you want to add anything else before we quit? You want to say anything else? Your case.
Kind of a repeat. People don't know her.
Yeah.
Okay, and they tend to want to think the worst of her because they don't want to believe what the DNA said. But in Melba's own words, the story doesn't matter because the DNA can't be lied, it can't be hoaxed, it can't be faked. Mm-hmm. And I tend to believe that. And as far as like Scott with the book, I wish him well. I don't want anybody to feel anything negative about it. I have been given a copy from a friend, and I have read it. As far as did he do a good job? Yes. But as far as Dr. Ketchum goes, people don't know the truth about her. Yeah. They know the truth in the DNA because she kept it about the DNA. She didn't keep it about her. And I'm hoping with this video or podcast that maybe people can see a little bit of the truth. She's a human being. She doesn't deserve anything that happened to her.
Yep.
And again, encourage people, go to that Sasquatch Genome Project.org. Answers are in there if you are willing to open your mind and read them. And if you still have questions, if you want to ask them in a calm, respectful manner, between her answering the science and I can answer whatever else needs to be done, we will do it all day and all night, as long as it's done in a respectful manner. That's all we're asking.
Great. And stop treating her as the proverbial Hester Prynne of science.
You know what? This woman has done so much and gotten so little. And she really needs to be applauded because she did something that nobody else did. And for all the attacks and abuse from the public and from the government and everything else, I have yet to see anybody else get 3 genomes and get the DNA that she got.
Yeah.
So they can complain all they want all day long, but I don't see anybody in line to do it.
Yep.
Dr. Sykes did it, and that was a joke.
Robin, I really think that someday this is going to be a blockbuster movie. It has.
It needs to.
We talked about all the elements that are involved in this.
Yes.
And they're definitely all here. And so it is a story that needs to be told. And I haven't read Scott's book yet, but I don't think you can tell the whole story in one book anyway. But I think
he did cover a lot of things that will answer a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But again, my only concern is for her because that was her story to tell. But as far as I did read it, and it was done well.
Yeah. And Melba is a hero. She's a hero she's a science. She's a hero for science. She's a hero for women.
There was a song that came out at the same time the paper was published, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it. Basically, it talked about the person being a hero and needed to be embraced and being at the top of the world because they did something nobody else can do. And my son, who is currently in Germany in the military, called me one day and dedicated that to her. Great. And I thought, you know what? He gets it.
Yeah.
He gets it.
I get it.
Yeah, and she needs more people like that because she totally deserves it.
Well, I promise you, after this podcast, she's going to have her own fan club in every state, I'm sure.
Yeah, I hope so. If not, I'll be president of it anyway.
All right. Well, Robin, we're going to have you back on the podcast. I think I'm going to close this off. I really appreciate you being on here and spending.
Well, thank you very much. It was lovely.
It really was lovely. This is one of the best podcasts I've ever done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
I'll hook this up, so
Yep,
she contacted me last night. So, by the way.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't get to say this, but I'll give a shout out. Hello, Melba. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and if you're angry about anything, it's Robin's fault. So I told her. So,
she loves me.
Anyway, I'm basically nothing more than a mere acquaintance to Melba, but I think about it.
She said good things about you. She did. She said she thought it was very nice.
Doesn't know me very well, so that's it. All right. Well, let's wrap this up. For everybody out there, we really appreciate you watching and sticking around for almost 2 hours of this podcast. We really appreciate Robin coming by, and I just want to make sure we understand this is Robin Haynes McCrae. Robin, do you write books or anything? Do you have a website we need to know about? Or
you know what? Actually, right now, I get asked that a lot, and generally, any of my things, Dr. Igor Borstead puts in his books. And I've done a couple inserts for some other people, not a lot. I just don't have really the time to do it.
Yeah.
I'm working currently on a hominology project. It's the International Hominology of the Forest People. And we have a new page up on Facebook. I'm partnered with Dr. Igor Borsta. Janice Carter is with us. And so we are trying to make a difference. We're trying to educate people and kind of bring the science and the regular people together and get the truth out about them as far as their lives, their culture, the fact that they're people, and teach people how to live alongside of them so we have less conflict. So I'm kind of right now just working on that.
Well, that is great.
And doing conferences too for John Stanier as well.
Okay, you're going to be camping on this website. We need to know all about that stuff. That's why
I'll be more than happy to come back. It's been fun.
That's why I started this podcast in the first place, to talk about that kind of stuff and learn about it. All right. Well, for everybody, this is Robin Haynes McCrae and Matthew Hines for Enounters USA. Thanks again, you guys, for stopping by. And remember, when you're out there in the woods, especially this summer, watch your back. All right. Thanks for listening to tonight's show. Please remember, if you've had an encounter, we want to hear about it. Go ahead and email us at encountersusa1@gmail.com or contact us at encountersusa.com, our website, and go to the contact form. All right, everybody. Until next time, be careful out there. And if you're out in the woods, watch your back.